Can a great seed grow in dry soil? Or is the environment the hand that shapes destiny? Have you ever asked yourself, what truly decides a person's growth? Is it natural talent, strict education, or simply the quiet choices of parents from early childhood? Between talent and character, between clever tricks and honesty, which factor is the golden key that creates a truly successful person? Let us travel back to 19th century London to witness the dramatic journey of a single mother and the valuable lesson that completely changed her son's future. Do not miss the video below to find the answer for your own family. Under the grey sky of Yorkshire, in the early 19th century, a young widow named Alara stood quietly in a small sewing workshop that was slowly becoming empty. The wind whistled through the door, like the scream of fate, reminding her of a tragedy that had just happened. Her husband, an ambitious architect, had died under the ruins of a collapsed building in London. The only thing he left behind was not money or status, but an old worn notebook that contained unfinished bridge designs. Dreams that had no chance to become real. Looking at her little son, Julian, sitting quietly and playing with small pieces of thread on the floor, Ilara's eyes showed strong determination. She understood that if they stayed in this remote town, Julian would grow up as a normal craftsman, working with pieces of cloth, and his father's legacy would slowly disappear with time. But to reach the light of knowledge, they had to enter the tiger's mouth of London, a place full of wealth, but also full of danger. With her sewing tools and an old wooden chest, Ilara took her son's hand and left their hometown. The image of the thin single mother holding luggage in one hand and tightly holding her son's hand with the other while walking toward the train station in the thick fog became the symbol of the biggest gamble of her life. She did not go to find salvation for herself, but to plant the seed of her son's talent in a land that was worthy. Could the hard work of a seamstress protect the pure heart of a child from the harsh life of a big city? This journey was not only a change of place, but also the beginning of a silent battle to shape a great character. The first place where the mother and son stopped was the Docklands, a busy port area but full of chaos in London. In a small attic room right above an illegal boxing ring, the loud cheers and the strong smell of cheap alcohol rose every night. Mrs. Ilara worked hard at her sewing table, trying to repair torn clothes for dock workers to earn a few coins. However, while the mother tried to keep a pure spirit, the environment around them slowly began to affect the child like a colorless poison. Julian, a boy who once had the soul of a future architect, now spent many hours by the window watching fights in the street. He no longer drew bridges, but began to learn how to shake shells, to gamble with the shoe-shining boys. One afternoon, Ilara was shocked when her son came home with a bruise on his face, and his eyes were full of cunning and anger. He happily showed his mother the coins he won by cheating his friends, and he calmly said rude curse words that he learned from the crowd near the gambling place. At that moment, Ilara's heart tightened. She realized that no matter how hard she worked, if her son continued to live in this dirty place, Julian's hands would never hold a pen to draw great buildings. They would only become fists or clever hands in dishonest games. The real tragedy was not poverty, but the way poverty was slowly destroying the kindness and dignity in her son. Without saying a word of anger, Ilara quietly packed their belongings. She decided to give up the small deposit they had and leave that place during the night. She clearly understood one cruel truth: when you stay near the mud, your feet will become dirty. To save her son's future, she had to pull this young seed out of the poisonous soil. After leaving the violent slum, Ilara's next stop was a small apartment between second-hand shops and busy metal trading floors in the commercial center of London. Here there were no fists or the smell of cheap alcohol, but the sound of metal hitting each other, loud bargaining, and the constant movement of money. Ilara hoped this busy place would teach Julian the value of hard work, but she soon realized that she had fallen into another subtle trap: extreme practicality. Julian, with his sharp intelligence, began to adapt to the lifestyle of smugglers and low-level brokers. Instead of loving the architectural drawings of his father, the boy now spent the whole day watching how people could transform useless items into expensive goods with sweet lies. Julian learned how to raise prices, how to see the weakness of buyers, to push them harder, and even how to replace his mother's thread with lower quality ones to earn more profit. He began to worship gold coins, like the only faith, believing that everything in the world, even kindness, had a clear price. The moment of awakening for Elora came when she saw Julian laughing at a poor woman who was begging for a lower price for a warm coat. At that time, Julian's eyes no longer had innocence, but only the cold calculation of a professional speculator. Elora was shocked to realize that her son was becoming an emotionless calculating machine, where his soul was filled with numbers and cunning. She understood that if the slum destroyed the body, this market was slowly eating her son's character from the inside. Once again, despite Julian's protest about missing the chance to become rich, Elora quietly packed her sewing tools. She would rather accept material hardship than let her son grow up with an empty heart that only saw the world through the lens of profit. The third move brought the mother and son to a modest attic apartment quietly located between the halls of the academy and several precision mechanical workshops. This was a completely different world. There were no angry curses from crazy crowds and no noisy actions of clever traders. Instead, it was a space of calm where the soft sound of turning book pages mixed with the steady ticking of clock gears being carefully made. Julian's neighbors were now wise old scholars and young engineers full of dreams. Instead of watching fights or learning how to bargain, Julian became fascinated by technical drawings and the laws of physics discussed warmly over afternoon tea. The boy found a wonderful connection between the lines in his father's notebook and the smooth movement of gears in the mechanical workshop next door. His natural curiosity awakened the architectural talent that had been hidden for a long time. Mrs. Elora smiled when she saw her son spending hours in the library instead of wandering near gambling places. Julian started drawing bridges and towers again, with great precision almost to every millimeter, and his eyes shone with the light of knowledge that his mother always hoped to see. She understood that after many difficulties, she had finally found the true soil of the soul for her son. Here, Julian did not only learn how to survive, but also how to create. He did not only learn to look down at the muddy ground, but also learned to look up at great structures that reached toward the clouds. In the peaceful neighborhood of knowledge, an unexpected event tested the honesty that Elora always tried to build in her son. Julian, while carefully drawing the design of his dream bridge, accidentally knocked over a bottle of thick black ink onto a pile of expensive silk cloth. It was an order from a countess who needed the dress for a royal ball. That silk was the most valuable item in their house, and the payment for it was the school fee for Julian for the whole year. Looking at the black stain spreading like a scar on the white silk, Julian became afraid and suggested that his mother use strong chemicals to clean it and hide the mistake, because the customer might not notice it immediately. However, Elora looked at her son with serious but compassionate eyes. She did not choose to lie. Instead, she used all her small savings to buy new silk and stayed awake all night to sew the dress again from the beginning. When she delivered the dress, she honestly apologized for the accident. She gently told Julian, "An ink stain on cloth can be cleaned, but a stain on honor will remain forever. An architect who builds a bridge may make a mistake of 1 centimeter on a drawing, but if he lies about the quality of the steel, that bridge will become a grave." This lesson about integrity entered deeply into Julian's heart, stronger than any book he had ever read. In the attic room, Julian began to ignore his architectural drawings and followed temporary pleasures with some new rich friends. He believed that with his natural intelligence, he did not need to work hard every day. One afternoon, when he returned home, Julian was shocked to see Mrs. Elora standing in front of the silk city planning map that she and Julian had carefully created and calculated together for 2 years. It was their most important work for Julian to join a national competition. Without shouting, Elora held a sharp tailor's scissors and firmly cut the map into 2 pieces, right in front of her son's shocked eyes. The valuable silk fell to the floor, and the beautiful hand-sewn threads were broken and scattered. Julian shouted, "What are you doing, mother?" "That is the result of 2 years of work." Alara looked directly into her son's eyes. Her voice was calm but very heavy. "I can sew the threads again, but I cannot repair your future if you cut it with your own laziness. Studying is like creating a work with threads. If you stop in the middle because of temporary temptations, then your whole life will become a torn drawing." The strong action of his mother woke Julian from his confusion. He understood that talent is only the beginning, but discipline is what truly brings a person to the top. Many decades passed and Julian had now become a great chief architect, the man who built beautiful steel bridges connecting the two sides of London. When he received an honorable invitation to go to America to lead a huge world-class project, Julian hesitated. Looking at his mother's white hair and her breathing becoming weaker every day, he wanted to give up the glory and stay to take care of her. But in her last moments, Alara held her son's rough hand and placed in it the old leather belt of his late father and her own worn sewing needle. She whispered with proud eyes, "You do not belong to this small room, Julian. I spent my whole life making wings for you, not to keep you beside me, but to see you fly farther than your father ever dreamed." Alara passed away peacefully on a bright sunset afternoon, leaving behind a legacy not of gold or money, but of strong character. Standing on the ship and looking toward a new horizon, Julian understood that his mother's final sacrifice was his freedom. He carried with him not only knowledge, but also the spirit of the mother who taught him how to live with honesty in a life full of storms. The journey of Julian and Mrs. Alara is not only a story about the past, but also a mirror for our lives today. The most valuable lesson is not about huge wealth, but about the power of environment and the example of parents. A great character does not appear by itself. It is shaped through strong discipline and honesty in front of temptation. Parents are like weavers patiently connecting each moral thread to create wings of freedom for their children to fly far. If you find this story meaningful, please share it to spread the message about education and true love from parents. Do not forget to press subscribe and turn on notifications so you will not miss the next deep life lessons. Thank you for spending your valuable time listening and walking this journey with us.